So it took me a minute to make this one because I've been a little bit under the weather lately. But I saw the fights, and as for Dominic Brazeale versus Amir Mansour, I mean, it seemed like it was a bit of an anticlimax the way it ended. But even still, the way Dominic Brazeale appeared to be being able to start timing Amir Mansour and catching him with those big shots, I'm not necessarily sure if Mansour's early lead would have held up through the mid and the late rounds and everything. Brazeale was tagging him. He was tagging him clean. And even though Amir managed to drop Brazeale and rock him a little bit, I think a lot of that has to do with Brazeale having kind of a weird gangly balance. He's like one of those classic tall guys who's a little bit like oafish and not the best coordinated. But that also kind of works to his advantage too, because the thing is, it makes it difficult for him to be able to time him if you're his opponent. It makes it difficult for you to be able to time his movements and exactly where the punches are going to be coming from. So I think that kind of plays into him and his power a little bit more than it would, another guy that's just uncoordinated altogether. Like his awkwardness, I guess, kind of makes up for it in a way. So, I mean, he took him out. And to be honest, I could see Dominic Brazeale in the near future possibly being used a little bit as a tool, so to speak, to kind of like hype Fury up, to hype Fury Wilder up, like to build that fight, quote unquote. Like basically the idea that I was thinking was like if I was Heyman or Brazeale's manager, promoter, whatever. Or somebody that has a high ranking in the PBC anyway, I would have Brazeale fight Fury first, then let that shit marinate, and then but whatever happens after that, they could possibly even have Fury fight against somebody like Gerald Washington, also while they still develop Deontay Wilder if they're trying to maximize the ability for Deontay to potentially win that fight. Just because Deontay is really learning on the job and everything. But this video was really more about Brazeale. I actually think as kind of weird and unbalanced as he looks, I think he's a really difficult fighter, man. And, sometimes there's guys that their style isn't pretty at all, but they're just hard as a motherfucker to beat. And I think that Brazeale is gonna be that for a lot of guys, except for guys that pack huge power. Because I think one of those guys is going to be somebody that's just going to lay him out. He's going to be awkward as shit, doing some Chris Bird type shit to an opponent, outboxing him and all that good stuff. And, maybe even tagging him up and scuffing him up a little bit. And then, boom, he's just going to get hit and dropped. Like if he was to fight Gerald Washington, for instance, a guy that's pretty much on his same level, I'd take Gerald to starch him, man. I think he would. I think he's got better technique. He's got cleaner technique. And he's better coordinated. It's like he knows how to move around the ring, keep his feet under him, and throw punches without throwing himself all completely out of balance. But there it goes. Brazeale's a little bit of a heavyweight in Mayorga in a way, albeit without the bravado. So that's it.